Dorothy Callahan collapsed face first into the snow, her frozen fingers still reaching for the door of a Hell's Angels clubhouse. Her husband Walter caught her a second too late. "Please," he begged the 20 leather-clad men who stood frozen in the doorway. "We can't walk anymore. My wife, she's dying." Not a single biker moved. The wind howled. Dorothy's lips had turned blue, and in that moment Walter, a 78-year-old Korean War veteran, did something no one expected. He got down on his knees. "Before we continue this incredible story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you want to see what happens next, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't believe what these bikers did next." Dorothy's body hit the frozen ground with a sound that would haunt Walter Callahan for the rest of his life. He'd carried her for the last 2 miles. 78 years old, bad knees, a back that hadn't worked right since Korea, and he'd carried her anyway. Because that's what you do when you've loved someone for 52 years. You carry them. But his arms had finally given out. "Dorothy." He dropped to his knees beside her, his arthritic hands shaking as he tried to lift her head from the snow. "Dorothy, baby, stay with me. Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. They'd turned a shade of blue that Walter had only seen once before on the faces of soldiers who didn't make it home. The neon sign above them buzzed and flickered. The Wolf's Den. And beneath it, a logo that would make most people run the other direction. Hell's Angels Pine Creek Chapter. Walter didn't care. He struggled to his feet and pounded on that door with everything he had left. "Help us, please, somebody, help us." The music inside stopped. The laughter died. For 3 long seconds, there was nothing but the howl of the Montana wind and the chattering of Dorothy's teeth. Then the door swung open. 20 men stood in the golden light of that clubhouse, leather jackets, gleaming tattoos crawling up their necks, beards braided and wild. The biggest one, a mountain of a man with a silver beard and eyes like cold steel, stepped forward. Jake Grizzly Morrison, president of the Pine Creek chapter, looked down at the old man kneeling in the snow, cradling his unconscious wife. "Please," Walter whispered, his voice cracking. "We can't walk anymore. My wife, she needs help. She's got a heart condition. Our truck broke down 12 miles back. We walked all this way." His voice broke completely. Grizzly didn't move. Behind him, a younger biker with a scar running down his cheek, they called him Razor, crossed his arms. "Jake, we don't know these people. Could be a setup." "Does that look like a setup to you?" another voice growled. This one came from a lean man with kind eyes and a Navy anchor tattooed on his forearm. Monk Patterson, the chapter's vice president. Grizzly still hadn't spoken. His eyes moved from Walter's weathered face to Dorothy's still form, then back again. "How long has she been unconscious?" Walter blinked hope flickering in his chest for the first time in hours. I don't know. 5 minutes, maybe 10. She just went down and..." Grizzly was already moving. In 3 strides, he was kneeling in the snow beside Dorothy, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he checked her pulse, lifted her eyelids, felt her forehead. "She's hypothermic," he said, his voice sharp with command. "Core temperature's dropping. We need to get her warm now." He looked over his shoulder. "Monk, clear the couch by the fire. Wrench, grab every blanket we've got. Spider heat water not boiling, just warm." The bikers scattered like soldiers. Grizzly lifted Dorothy as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. He looked down at Walter, who was struggling to stand. "Can you walk, old man?" Walter's jaw tightened. I carried her for 2 miles. I can make it 20 more feet. Something shifted in Grizzly's eyes. Respect, maybe. Recognition. One soldier seeing another. Then follow me. The heat hit Walter like a physical force as he stumbled through the door of the wolf's den. After hours in the bitter cold, it felt like stepping into heaven itself. The clubhouse was nothing like he'd expected. Yes, there were motorcycle parts on the walls and a bar in the corner and a pool table with worn felt. But there was also a fireplace roaring with real logs, comfortable couches, and photographs everywhere. Bikers with their families, their kids, their dogs. These weren't monsters. They were men. Grizzly laid Dorothy on the couch closest to the fire, and immediately 2 bikers wrapped her in blankets. Another appeared with warm water bottles, tucking them against her sides. Get those wet clothes off her feet, Grizzly ordered. Slowly. Don't rub the skin, you'll cause more damage. Monk looked at him sideways. Since when are you a doctor? I'm not. Grizzly didn't look up from Dorothy's face. But I was an army medic. 3 tours. You don't forget this stuff. Walter sank into a chair beside his wife, too exhausted to stand any longer. A young biker with a shaved head pressed a mug of hot coffee into his hands. Thank you, Walter whispered. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Grizzly said. She's not out of the woods. He stood wiping his hands on his jeans. What happened? Why were you out on that road in the middle of winter? Walter took a long sip of coffee, feeling it burn all the way down. Our truck. The transmission went out about 12 miles east of here. No cell signal. No traffic. We had to walk. 12 miles. The young biker, his name patch said Diesel, stared in disbelief. In this weather, we didn't have a choice. Razor snorted from his spot near the bar. There's always a choice. You could have stayed with the truck, waited for help. No. Walter's voice hardened. We couldn't. Something in his tone made everyone stop. Grizzly crossed his arms, studying the old man with new interest. Why not? Walter looked at Dorothy. Her color was slowly returning, her breathing steadier now. But he could see how frail she'd become, how much weight she'd lost over the past few months. The truth sat in his chest like a stone. Because my wife is dying, he said quietly. Cancer. The doctors gave her 3 months that was 2 months ago. He swallowed hard. We're trying to get to Silver Falls. Our son lives there. Thomas. We haven't seen him in 7 years. The clubhouse went silent. 7 years? Monk's voice was soft. That's a long time. It is. Walter's hands tightened around the mug. We had a falling out. Stupid thing looking back. He got divorced, and he shook his head. We said things we shouldn't have. Took his ex-wife's side when we should have listened to him. By the time we realized our mistake, he'd moved away. Changed his number. Stopped answering letters. So why now? Grizzly asked. Walter's eyes never left Dorothy. Because she's never met her grandson, Oliver. He's 4 years old and she's never held him, never heard him laugh, never told him she loves him. His voice broke. She has weeks left, maybe days. And all she wants, the only thing she wants, is to hold that little boy before she goes. The fire crackled. Someone coughed. Razor stared at his boots. Does your son know you're coming? Grizzly asked. No. So he might not even let you in the door. Walter met his eyes. That's a chance we have to take. Dorothy woke up 45 minutes later. She came back to consciousness slowly, like rising from deep water. The first thing she saw was firelight. The second was Walter's face lined with worry. Hey, beautiful, he whispered, squeezing her hand. Walter? Her voice was barely audible. Where Where are we? Somewhere safe, sweetheart. You're safe now. She blinked, taking in her surroundings. The rough-hewn walls, the leather jackets hanging by the door, the giant man standing by the fireplace watching her with unreadable eyes. Are those, she squinted, are those Hell's Angels? Grizzly stepped forward, and despite herself, Dorothy flinched. He stopped immediately. Ma'am, I know we look scary, but we're not going to hurt you. You collapsed outside. We've been warming you up. Dorothy looked at Walter, who nodded. Then she looked back at Grizzly, really looked at him. Past the beard and the tattoos and the leather, past everything the world had taught her to fear, she saw kind eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for helping us. Something cracked in Grizzly's expression. Just for a moment. Then it was gone. How are you feeling? Any chest pain? Dizziness? I'm all right. Just tired. She tried to sit up and gasped, pressing her hand to her chest. Walter was at her side instantly. Dorothy. My medicine, she breathed. Walter, my heart medicine. It's in the truck. The blood drained from Walter's face. Oh God, I forgot. I grabbed our bag, but I didn't. Where's the truck? Grizzly cut in. 12 miles east, maybe 13, right where the road curves past Miller's Ridge. Grizzly looked at Wrench, a wiry man with grease-stained fingers. Take Diesel. Find the truck, get the medicine. Whatever else looks important, grab it. Wrench was already reaching for his jacket. On it, boss. Wait. Razor stepped forward, his jaw tight. We're really doing this. We don't know these people. We don't owe them anything. And the clubhouse went dead quiet. Grizzly turned slowly. What did you say? I said we don't owe them anything. Razor didn't back down. Look, I feel bad for the lady, but we've got enough problems. The Diablos have been making moves all month. For all we know, this is some kind of distraction while they... A distraction. Grizzly's voice dropped to something dangerous. You think a 75-year-old woman with hypothermia and heart disease is a distraction? I'm saying we should be careful. And I'm saying you need to remember who you are. Grizzly stepped closer, and even though Razor was younger and maybe just as strong, he took a step back. We're not soldiers. We're not cops. We're not heroes. But we're not cowards either. When someone collapses on our doorstep asking for help, we help. That's not negotiable. Razor's jaw worked. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then he dropped his eyes. Fine. But if this goes sideways, it won't. Wrench and Diesel slipped out the door. The sound of their motorcycles roaring to life cut through the tension. Grizzly turned back to Dorothy, his expression softening. They'll have your medicine within the hour. In the meantime, you need to rest. I don't know how to thank you. Dorothy's eyes glistened. Everyone always told me to stay away from places like this. From people like... She stopped embarrassed. People like us? Grizzly smiled, but there was sadness in it. They weren't wrong, ma'am, most of the time. He pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. But even outlaws have mothers. It was nearly midnight when Grizzly found Walter standing outside, staring up at the stars. The old man hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Dorothy falling, heard the sound of her body hitting the frozen ground. She's resting, Grizzly said, coming to stand beside him. Her vitals are stable. The medicine helped. Thank you. Walter's voice was rough. I don't know what I would have done if... Don't. Grizzly pulled out a cigarette, lit it. Don't think about that. They stood in silence for a while, two men from different worlds watching their breath cloud in the cold air. You were in the service, Walter said. It wasn't a question. Army, medical corps, 3 tours in Iraq. I was in Korea, Incheon, the frozen Chosin. Grizzly turned to look at him. The Chosin Reservoir. You survived that. Barely. Walter's eyes went distant. Lost half my unit. Walked through snow that makes this, he gestured at the Montana night, look like a beach vacation. And you walked 12 miles tonight, with your wife on your back. Only the last 2. Grizzly shook his head, something like wonder in his voice. You're a tough old bastard, Walter Callahan. I'm a desperate one. Walter's jaw tightened. My wife is dying. My son won't speak to me. My grandson doesn't know I exist. This, he gestured around him, this trip, this stupid, impossible trip, it's the only thing I can give her. Tell me about your son. Walter sighed, a sound heavy with years of regret. Thomas was always stubborn. Got it from me. When his marriage fell apart, Dorothy and we blamed him. We'd known his wife for years, liked her better than we should have. When he told us she'd been unfaithful, we didn't believe him. He laughed bitterly. Our own son. We called him a liar. What happened? He showed us proof. Bank statements, hotel receipts, photos. Walter's voice hardened. But by then the damage was done. He said we'd chosen her over him. Said if we couldn't trust him, he didn't want us in his life. He wiped his eyes. 7 years. I've written him every month for 7 years. Not one letter came back opened. Grizzly was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother died while I was overseas. Walter turned. We'd had a fight before I deployed. Stupid thing, she didn't approve of the club, thought I was throwing my life away. I told her she didn't understand anything. Those were the last words I said to her. Grizzly took a long drag of his cigarette. She had a stroke 8 months later. By the time they got word to me, she'd been gone 3 days. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you for sympathy. Grizzly's eyes met Walter's. I'm telling you because I know what it's like to run out of time, to realize too late that pride doesn't keep you warm at night. Walter nodded slowly. Is that why you're helping us? Because you see something in our story? Maybe. Grizzly dropped his cigarette, grounded under his boot. Or maybe I'm just tired of watching families fall apart when they don't have to. The sun wasn't up yet when Wrench and Diesel returned with Dorothy's medicine and a disturbing piece of news. The truck's dead, Wrench reported, warming his hands by the fire. Transmission's completely gone. You're looking at a $2,000 repair minimum. And that's if you can even find parts for a model that old. Walter's face fell. How much would a rental cost to get us to Silver Falls, 95 miles in the dead of winter? Wrench shook his head. No rental company in Pine Creek is going to let a 78-year-old drive those mountain passes. Too much liability. What about a bus? Next one doesn't come through until Thursday, 3 days from now. Dorothy, who had been listening from the couch, closed her eyes. We're so close, she whispered. We're so close and we can't, ma'am. Grizzly's voice cut through her despair. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She looked at him, hope flickering in her tired eyes. Anything. How long do you really have? Not what you tell your husband. Not what you tell yourself to get through the day. The truth. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then, the doctor said I might not make it to Christmas. Dorothy, Walter's voice cracked. I know, sweetheart. I know. She reached for his hand. But he deserves the truth. Grizzly nodded slowly. And how important is it really that you see your grandson? It's the only thing I'm still alive for. Dorothy's voice was steady. I've made my peace with God. I've made my peace with dying. But I can't go without holding that little boy. I can't go without telling my son I'm sorry. I can't. The room was silent. Every biker in the clubhouse had stopped what they were doing. Grizzly looked at Monk, then at Wrench, then at Diesel. Finally his eyes landed on Razor, who was standing in the corner, arms crossed. "Brothers," he said, "I think it's time for a vote." "A vote on what?" Walter asked. Grizzly turned to face him. "On whether we ride you to Silver Falls ourselves." The vote wasn't close. It was unanimous. Even Razor raised his hand. Grizzly stood in the center of the clubhouse, his brothers gathered around him. "Then it's settled. We leave at dawn. 15 bikes, full escort. Monk, you're driving the support van with the Callahans. Wrench, make sure all bikes are road ready. Spider, check the weather reports. I want to know exactly what we're riding into." "Jake." Razor stepped forward, and everyone tensed, but his voice was different now. Quieter. "I was wrong earlier. I was thinking about threats that might not exist instead of the people standing right in front of me. I'm sorry." Grizzly clasped his shoulder. "Brother, the day we stop questioning is the day we stop protecting each other. No apologies needed." He looked around the room. "Get some sleep. We've got a long ride ahead." As the bikers dispersed, Dorothy reached for Grizzly's hand. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You don't know us. You owe us nothing. Why would you do this?" Grizzly looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because my mother died alone. Because I never got to say goodbye. Because every single man in this room carries regrets they can't undo." He squeezed her hand gently. "We can't change our own stories, Mrs. Callahan. But maybe, just maybe, we can change yours." Dorothy pressed his hand to her cheek, tears streaming down her face. "God sent us to the right door." "Maybe he did." Grizzly smiled. "Or maybe God just rides a Harley." The sun broke over the mountains just after 6 in the morning. 15 motorcycles sat in formation outside the Wolf's Den, chrome-gleaming engines warming. The air was bitter cold, but the sky was clear for now. Wrench had checked the weather reports 3 times. A major storm was coming. They had maybe 18 hours before it hit. Grizzly stood at the head of the formation looking back at his brothers. Diesel, Wrench, Spider, Monk, Razor, all of them. "Listen up," he said. "This isn't a Sunday ride. These roads are dangerous in summer. In winter, they're deadly. We stay tight, we stay focused, we stay together. No showboating, no heroics. Our only job is to get these 2 people to Silver Falls safely." "And if we can't?" someone asked. "We will." Grizzly's voice left no room for doubt. "Because failure is not an option. Not today." He walked to the support van where Monk was helping Dorothy into the passenger seat. Walter stood beside her, his eyes bright with tears he was too proud to shed. "Mr. Callahan?" Grizzly extended his hand. "You ready?" Walter clasped it firmly. "I've been ready for 7 years." Grizzly nodded. Then he mounted his bike, kicked the engine to life, and looked at the road ahead. 95 miles. 1 dying woman. 1 family that didn't know they were coming. And 15 Hell's Angels who'd decided that maybe, just maybe, this was what they were meant to do all along. "Let's ride," Grizzly said. And the thunder began. The convoy had been rolling for 45 minutes when Dorothy's hand shot to her chest. "Walter?" Her voice came out strangled tight. "Walter, something's wrong." Monk glanced in the rearview mirror, saw the color draining from her face, and grabbed his radio. "Grizzly, we got a problem. The lady, something's happening." The formation slowed. Grizzly's bike pulled alongside the van within seconds. "What's going on?" "I don't know." And Walter was already unbuckling his seatbelt, climbing into the back to reach Dorothy. "Sweetheart, talk to me. What do you feel?" "Pressure." Dorothy gripped his arm so hard her knuckles went white. "Like someone sitting on my chest, and my left arm is tingling." Grizzly's face went hard. "Pull over. Now." The convoy stopped on the shoulder of the mountain road. Grizzly was out of his saddle and at the van door before Monk had even cut the engine. "Mrs. Callahan, look at me." He took her wrist, checking her pulse. Fast. Too fast. When did this start? Just now. A few minutes ago. I thought it was nothing but, has this happened before? Once. Last month. The doctor said it was angina. They gave me pills. Where are the pills? Walter was already tearing through Dorothy's purse. Here they are. He shoved the bottle into Grizzly's hands. Grizzly read the label, popped, the cap, shook one into his palm. Under your tongue. Don't chew it. Let it dissolve. Dorothy took the pill with trembling fingers. The bikers had gathered around the van, 15 men in leather jackets forming a wall against the wind. Nobody spoke. Diesel shifted his weight from foot to foot. Is she going to be okay? Quiet. Grizzly didn't look up. His eyes stayed locked on Dorothy's face, watching her color, her breathing, the sweat beading on her forehead. 1 minute passed. 2. Dorothy's grip on Walter's arm slowly loosened. The lines of pain in her face began to smooth. Better, she whispered. It's better. Grizzly let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The pill worked. For now. He stood, his knees cracking. But this changes things. She needs a hospital. No. Dorothy's voice was suddenly sharp, fierce. No hospital. Ma'am, I said no. She struggled to sit up straighter, and Walter helped her. I've spent the last 6 months in hospitals, getting poked and prodded and told all the ways I'm dying. I'm not spending another minute in one. Her eyes met Grizzly's. You promised to take me to my grandson. That's where I'm going. Even if you have to carry my body across the finish line. Walter made a sound of protest, but Dorothy silenced him with a look. I mean it, Walter. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of dying without seeing Oliver's face, without telling Thomas I love him. Her voice cracked. If I go in a hospital, that's where I'll stay, and I'll never get out. I know it. I feel it in my bones. The wind howled across the mountain pass. Grizzly looked at his brothers, at Monk's worried face, at Razor's clenched jaw, at Diesel's wide eyes. Then he looked back at Dorothy. How far is the nearest hospital? He asked Monk. About 30 miles back the way we came. And Silver Falls, 50 miles ahead. Grizzly closed his eyes. He thought about his mother, about the call that came 3 days too late, about all the things he'd never gotten to say. We keep going, he said. Jake, Monk started. We keep going. Grizzly's voice was steel. But we ride faster, and we don't stop again unless we absolutely have to. He turned to Wrench. How's the weather looking? Wrench checked his phone, and his face went pale. Storm's moving faster than they predicted. We've got maybe 12 hours now. Could be less. Then we don't have time to argue. Grizzly mounted his bike. Let's move. The convoy pushed harder after that. The engines roared louder, the formation tighter. Every biker rode with new intensity, as if they could somehow will the road to be shorter through sheer determination. Inside the van, Walter held Dorothy's hand and didn't let go. You scared me back there, he said quietly. I know. Dorothy squeezed his fingers. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just... His voice broke. Just stay with me. A little longer. Please. I'm trying, sweetheart. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm trying so hard. They rode in silence for a while. The mountains rose around them, massive and indifferent ancient witnesses to 1,000 human dramas. Finally, Dorothy spoke again. Walter, I need to tell you something. What is it? If something happens to me, don't. Walter, listen to me. Her voice was gentle, but firm. If something happens before we get there, I need you to promise me you'll still go. That you'll still see Thomas and Oliver. That you won't give up just because I'm not there. Dorothy, promise me. Walter's jaw worked. His eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. I can't imagine doing any of this without you. You can. And you will. Because our son needs his father. Dorothy touched his face. And that little boy deserves to know at least one of his grandparents. You're going to make it. Maybe. Maybe not. She smiled, sad and peaceful. But either way, I need to know you won't give up. Walter couldn't speak. He just nodded, pressing her hand to his lips. Monk watched them in the rearview mirror, his own eyes burning. He'd been married once, lost her to cancer 10 years ago. He knew that conversation. He knew exactly what it cost to have it. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, and he pressed the accelerator a little harder. 2 hours into the ride, they hit the first checkpoint. A state patrol car sat across the road, lights flashing. 2 officers stood beside it, hands on their belts. Grizzly raised his fist, and the convoy slowed to a stop. Well, well? The older officer stepped forward, eyeing the line of motorcycles with barely concealed hostility. Hell's Angels, what brings you boys out on a day like this? Just passing through, officer. Grizzly kept his voice neutral. Passing through to where? Silver Falls. The officer's partner circled around the convoy, peering into faces, memorizing patches. That's a long ride in bad weather. What's the hurry? Personal business. Personal business? The older officer smirked. That's usually code for something we need to know about. Grizzly felt his jaw tighten. He'd done this dance 100 times before. Usually he'd push back, trade barbs, make it clear he wasn't going to be intimidated. But today wasn't about him. Officer, we're transporting an elderly couple to see their family. The woman is sick. We're trying to get her there before the storm hits. That's so. The officer looked past him to the support van. Mind if we take a look? Actually, yes. We do mind. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Excuse me. The lady just had a medical episode. She needs rest, not interrogation. Grizzly didn't blink. We haven't broken any laws. We're not speeding. We're not carrying anything illegal. We're just a group of men trying to help 2 people in need. And we're supposed to just take your word for that. Before Grizzly could respond, the van door opened. Walter Callahan stepped out. He was still wearing his Korean War veteran's cap. His back was bent, his hands shaking from cold and age and exhaustion. But his eyes were the eyes of a soldier who'd walked through hell and refused to stay there. Officers, his voice carried across the wind. My name is Walter Callahan, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, retired. I served at Incheon and the Chosin Reservoir. I've got my military ID right here. He reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. My wife is in that van. She's dying of cancer. She wants to see our grandson before she goes. He handed the ID to the older officer, who took it automatically. These men, Walter gestured at the bikers, found us half frozen on the side of the road last night. They took us in, warmed us up, saved my wife's life, and now they're driving us 95 miles through dangerous mountain passes in the dead of winter because nobody else would. The officer looked at the ID, looked at Walter's face, looked at the line of bikers sitting silently on their motorcycles. So, I'm asking you, officer to officer, Walter's voice hardened, are you going to help us, or are you going to stand in our way? The silence stretched for an eternity. Finally, the older officer handed back the ID. "Chosen Reservoir," he said quietly. "My father was there too. 5th Marines." Walter nodded. "Good unit. Brave men." "Yeah, they were." The officer stepped back. "Road's clear ahead for about 30 miles, after that watch for ice on the switchbacks." He looked at Grizzly. "Get them there safe." Grizzly nodded once. "That's the plan." The patrol car moved aside. The convoy rolled through. As they passed, the younger officer raised his hand in something that might have been a salute. They stopped for fuel at a crossroads town called Miller's Junction. The gas station was small and weathered its pumps, ancient, its windows plastered with faded advertisements. The attendant, a teenage boy with acne and wide eyes, watched the convoy pull in like he was seeing aliens land. "Holy crap," he whispered. "Are you guys Hell's Angels?" Diesel grinned as he filled his tank. "What gave it away?" "I've never seen real bikers before, just in movies." "We're better looking in person, right?" The boy laughed nervously. Then his eyes moved to the support van where Monk was helping Dorothy stretch her legs. "Is that lady okay? She looks really pale." "She's sick." Diesel's grin faded. "We're trying to get her to her family." "Oh." The boy watched as Walter guided Dorothy to a bench outside the station. "That's really nice of you guys. Most people—" He stopped. "Most people what? Most people think bikers are scary. Like you'd hurt somebody." Diesel was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, well, we're full of surprises." Inside the station, Grizzly bought coffee and sandwiches while Wrench checked the forecast again. The storm was still coming, moving faster every hour. "We're cutting it close, boss," Wrench said. "Real close." "I know. If we get caught in that storm on the mountain passes, I know." Grizzly took a long drink of coffee. "But we can't turn back now, not when we're this close." "I'm not saying turn back. I'm saying we need a plan B." "What kind of plan B?" Wrench hesitated. "There's a town about 20 miles ahead. Hillcrest. They've got a small medical clinic and a motel. If the storm hits before we can make it to Silver Falls, we could shelter there. And leave those 2 people 20 miles from their family when the woman might not survive the night. Jake? No." Grizzly's voice was quiet but final. "We keep going. We don't stop. We get them there. And if we can't—" Grizzly didn't answer. He just walked back outside where Dorothy was sitting on the bench watching the bikers refuel their machines. She looked up as he approached. "Mr. Morrison." "Just Jake, ma'am." "Jake." She smiled weakly. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you really help us? And don't tell me it's because your mother died. That's part of it, I know. But there's something else." Grizzly was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down beside her. "When I got back from Iraq," he said slowly, "I was a mess. Angry at everything. Drinking too much. Couldn't hold down a job. Couldn't sleep without nightmares." He stared at his hands. "The club saved me. Gave me brothers when I had nobody. Gave me purpose when I had none. But I always wondered if I was using it as an excuse to hide from the world, to avoid dealing with my own demons." He looked at her. "Last night when I saw your husband on his knees in the snow begging for help, I saw myself. Not who I am now. Who I could have been. If someone hadn't opened a door for me when I needed it most." Dorothy reached out and took his hand. Her grip was frail but warm. "You're a good man, Jake Morrison. Whatever the world says about you, whatever those patches mean to other people, you're a good man." Grizzly's throat tightened. "You don't know the things I've done." "I know the things you're doing now." She squeezed his hand. "And that's enough." They were 20 miles from Silver Falls when the road disappeared. A massive rock slide had torn across the highway, boulders the size of cars mixed with twisted trees and rivers of frozen mud. The path forward was completely blocked. Grizzly killed his engine and stared at the destruction. No. His voice was barely a whisper. No, no, no. Razor pulled up beside him. What do we do? I don't know. There's got to be another way around. On mountain roads in winter? Grizzly shook his head. This is the only pass. Behind them, the van pulled to a stop. Monk got out, took one look at the rock slide, and swore under his breath. How long to clear it? He asked. Wrench was already examining the debris. Hours, maybe more. Some of these rocks weigh a ton. We don't have hours. I know. Dorothy had gotten out of the van. Walter tried to stop her, but she pushed his hands away and walked forward until she was standing at the edge of the destruction. 20 miles, she said softly. We're 20 miles away. Nobody knew what to say. Then Razor spoke. I can do it. Everyone turned to look at him. What? Grizzly asked. I can do it. Razor walked toward the rock slide, studying it with hard eyes. It's not all big stuff. Some of these rocks we can move them. It'll take time, but we can make a path. Enough for the van to get through. That could take all day. Then we better start now. He didn't wait for permission. He just walked to the nearest boulder, braced his shoulder against it, and pushed. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Diesel stepped forward. Then Wrench. Then Monk. One by one, every biker in the convoy walked to that wall of rock and started to work. Grizzly watched them, these men who society had written off, these outlaws and criminals, lifting stones with their bare hands, their breath misting in the cold air, their muscles straining against impossible weight. He walked to Dorothy, who stood watching with tears streaming down her face. We're going to get you there, he said. I promise. She couldn't speak. She just nodded. Grizzly took off his leather jacket, handed it to her, and walked toward the rock slide. He picked up a stone, and he started to work. 3 hours. They had been moving rocks for 3 hours. Razor's hands were bleeding. The skin had torn open on his palms an hour ago, but he hadn't stopped. Couldn't stop. Every time he felt the pain, he looked at Dorothy sitting in the van wrapped in Grizzly's jacket, and he kept going. Almost there. Wrench wiped sweat from his forehead despite the freezing temperature. Just a few more feet, and the van can squeeze through. Diesel lifted a rock the size of a microwave and hurled it to the side. His arms were shaking. I can't feel my fingers anymore. You don't need to feel them. Grizzly grabbed the next boulder. You just need to use them. But Walter had tried to help at first. The old man had picked up stones alongside the bikers until his legs gave out. Now he sat beside Dorothy, holding her hand, watching these strangers destroy their bodies to save his family. Why are they doing this? He asked, his voice cracking. They're hurting themselves. For us. Dorothy squeezed his hand. Because some people are still good, Walter, even when the world tells them they're not. Monk stumbled, went down on one knee. Spider grabbed his arm and pulled him up. You okay, brother? Fine. Monk spat blood from a split lip. Just lost my footing. Maybe take a break. Maybe mind your own business. Monk grabbed another rock and kept moving. The wind had picked up in the last hour. The storm was closer now, the sky turning an angry gray. They could all feel it coming, pressing down on them like a threat. Grizzly checked his watch. 4 hours until dark. Maybe 5, until the storm hit full force. They weren't going to make it. He didn't say it out loud. Didn't need to. Every man there knew the math. But they kept working anyway. Grizzly! Razor's voice cut through the wind. I think we've got enough room. The van might fit. Grizzly dropped his rock and walked to the narrow gap they'd carved through the debris. It was tight. Too tight. The van's mirrors would scrape. The sides might get damaged. "Monk, bring it forward. Slow." Monk climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. Inch by inch, the van crept toward the gap. Metal screamed against rock. "Keep going!" Grizzly shouted. "Don't stop." The van lurched forward. Something cracked. Something scraped. Dorothy closed her eyes, gripping Walter's arm. And then they were through. The bikers erupted in exhausted cheers. Diesel pumped his fist. Spider let out a whoop that echoed off the mountains. Even Razor smiled, blood dripping from his torn hands. "We did it." Wrench laughed in disbelief. "We actually did it!" Grizzly didn't celebrate. He was already walking to his bike. "Mount up. We've lost 3 hours. We need to make up time." The engines roared back to life. The convoy reformed tighter than before. Every biker rode like they had something to prove. 20 miles. Just 20 miles. They made it 15 before Dorothy collapsed again. This time it was worse. She didn't grab her chest. She didn't say a word. She just slumped forward in her seat, unconscious, her skin gray as ash. "Pull over!" Walter screamed. "Something's wrong! She's not waking up!" Monk slammed the brakes. The convoy scattered as the van skidded to a stop on the narrow mountain road. Grizzly was off his bike before it stopped moving. He yanked open the van door and felt for Dorothy's pulse. Nothing. He felt again, pressing harder against her wrist. Still nothing. "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "No, not like this." "What's happening?" Walter grabbed his arm. "What's wrong with her?" Her heart stopped. The world went silent. Walter's face crumbled. His legs buckled, and Diesel caught him before he hit the ground. "Dorothy." Walter's voice was a broken thing. "Dorothy, please. Please don't leave me." Grizzly was already pulling Dorothy from the van, laying her flat on the cold ground. "I need room. Everyone back." "Jake, what are you doing?" Monk asked. "What I was trained to do." Grizzly positioned his hands over Dorothy's chest. "Come on, Mrs. Callahan. You didn't come this far to quit now." He started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm was brutal, punishing. Grizzly's arms burned. His shoulders screamed. "Come on!" His voice was low, fierce. "Come on!" 15 compressions. Then he tilted her head back, pinched her nose, breathed into her mouth. Nothing. He started again. "Jake," Razor stepped forward. "Not now." "Jake, it's been 2 minutes." "I said not now." 20 compressions. Another breath. Nothing. Walter was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Please, God. Please don't take her, not yet. We're so close." 30 compressions. Grizzly's arms were shaking. Sweat poured down his face despite the cold. "You don't get to die here." His voice cracked. "You hear me? You don't get to die on this road. Not when your grandson is waiting. Not when your son doesn't know you're coming." 35 compressions. 40. "Breathe, damn you!" Grizzly slammed his fist against her chest. Dorothy gasped. Her eyes flew open. Her chest heaved. She coughed, choked, gasped again. "That's it!" Grizzly's voice broke with relief. "That's it. Breathe. Just breathe." Walter crawled to her side, cradling her head in his lap. "Dorothy. Dorothy, I'm here. I'm right here." "Walter." Her voice was thin, confused. "What happened?" "Your heart stopped, ma'am." Grizzly sat back on his heels, his whole body trembling. "But it's beating now? You're okay?" Dorothy looked at him. Then at the bikers gathered around her, their faces tight with fear and relief. Then at the gray sky above. "I saw her," she whispered. "Saw who?" "My mother." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "She was waiting for me, but she said it wasn't time. She said I had something left to do." Nobody spoke. The wind howled around them. Grizzly helped her sit up slowly. "Can you travel?" "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice. We can turn back, get you to a hospital." Dorothy grabbed his arm with surprising strength. 5 miles! We're 5 miles from my grandson. You could drag my body there and I wouldn't complain. I'm not turning back. Grizzly looked at Walter, who nodded. "Then we keep going." Grizzly stood offering Dorothy his hand. "But I'm riding in the van with you, just in case." "What about your bike?" "Diesel can handle it." He looked at the young biker. "You scratch my chrome, I'll kill you." Diesel grinned despite everything. "Wouldn't dream of it, boss." The last 5 miles were the longest of their lives. Dorothy drifted in and out of consciousness. Walter held her hand and talked to her constantly, telling stories about their life together, about Thomas as a baby, about the day they got married. "Remember our first apartment?" he said, his voice cracking. "That tiny place in Pittsburgh with the leaky roof. The bathtub didn't work," Dorothy murmured. "But the view was beautiful. You could see the whole city from our window. I loved that apartment. I loved you in that apartment." Walter pressed his lips to her forehead. "I've loved you every day since." Grizzly sat in the back of the van watching them. He'd seen a lot in his life. War, death, violence. But he'd never seen anything as powerful as this old man holding on to his dying wife, refusing to let go. "Mr. Morrison." Dorothy's voice was barely audible. "Yes, ma'am. If I don't make it, you'll make it." "But if I don't..." She opened her eyes, and they were clear focused. "Tell Thomas I'm sorry. Tell him I should have believed him. Tell him I loved him every single day, even when I was too proud to say it. You'll tell him yourself. Promise me. Just in case." Grizzly swallowed hard. "I promise." Dorothy smiled weakly. "And thank you. For everything. For opening your door. For treating us like family." "You are family now, ma'am. That's how it works with us." "Is that true?" "Once you help someone, their family, something like that." Grizzly's voice was rough. "We don't have much, but what we have we share. And we don't abandon our own." Dorothy reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "You have more than you know," she whispered. "So much more." The first houses of Silver Falls appeared just as the snow began to fall. "We're here," Monk's voice crackled through the radio. "Jake, we're here." Grizzly looked out the window. The town was small, quiet, peaceful. White houses with wraparound porches, churches with steeples, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and waved at strangers. "What's the address?" he asked Walter. 247 Maple Street. Walter's voice was shaking. "Blue house, corner lot." "Monk, you hear that? Got it. 2 minutes out." Dorothy was struggling to sit up. Help me see." Grizzly and Walter eased her to a sitting position. She pressed her face to the window, drinking in every detail of the town. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Thomas picked a beautiful place to live." "He always had good taste," Walter said. The convoy turned onto Maple Street. People stopped on sidewalks to stare. Curtains twitched in windows. A woman walking her dog froze mid-step. 15 motorcycles rolling down a quiet suburban street. The sound alone was enough to shake the foundations. "There," Walter pointed with a trembling finger. "That's it. That's Thomas's house. The blue house sat on the corner exactly as he'd described. A child's bicycle lay abandoned in the front yard. Christmas lights still hung from the gutters even though Christmas was weeks past. The convoy stopped. Grizzly got out first, then helped Walter ease Dorothy from the van. She could barely stand, but she refused to let them carry her. "I'm walking to that door," she said, "on my own 2 feet." "Dorothy," Walter started, "I'm walking." So they walked. Dorothy between her husband and Grizzly, one agonizing step at a time. The bikers formed a line behind them, silent witnesses to the end of a journey. They reached the porch. Walter raised his hand to knock. He couldn't do it. His hand hung there, frozen, trembling. 7 years of silence. 7 years of unopened letters. 7 years of wondering if his son even thought about them anymore. "I can't." His voice broke. "What if he won't see us? What if he—" Dorothy reached past him and knocked. 3 sharp raps against the wooden door. For a long moment nothing happened. Then footsteps. The click of a deadbolt. The creak of hinges. The door opened. Thomas Callahan stood in the doorway. He looked older than Walter remembered. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Gray at his temples. But the same stubborn jaw. The same fierce eyes. His father's eyes. "Dad." Thomas's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, Thomas." Dorothy reached for him. "My baby." Thomas didn't move. His face cycled through emotions too fast to name. Shock. Anger. Confusion. Pain. "What are you doing here? How did you—" His eyes moved past them to the line of motorcycles, to the men in leather jackets, standing silent in his yard. "What the hell is going on?" "We came to see you." Walter's voice cracked. "We came to apologize." "Apologize?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "After 7 years you show up unannounced with a biker gang and you want to apologize. Thomas, please. Do you have any idea what you put me through?" Thomas's voice rose. "I lost my marriage and you blamed me. Your own son. You chose her over me. We were wrong." Tears streamed down Walter's face. "We were so wrong. You think you can just show up and— I'm dying, Thomas." Dorothy's voice cut through everything. Thomas froze. "What? Cancer?" Dorothy's legs gave out. Grizzly caught her before she fell. "The doctors gave me 3 months. That was 2 months ago." "Mom, I had to see you. Had to tell you I'm sorry, that I was wrong. That I loved you every single day, even when I couldn't show it." Thomas stood there, his face crumbling. Years of anger fighting against something deeper. Something he'd tried to bury. "You're dying, yes. And you came all this way in winter. Our truck broke down 12 miles outside Pine Creek." Walter stepped forward. "These men found us, saved your mother's life, drove us 90 miles through mountain passes to get here." Thomas looked at the bikers. Really looked at them. Razor with his bloody hands and torn jacket. Diesel barely able to stand from exhaustion. Grizzly still holding Dorothy upright, his face etched with determination. "Why?" Thomas asked. "Why would you do that for strangers?" Grizzly met his eyes. "Because your mother asked to hold her grandson before she dies, and that's not something you say no to." Thomas made a sound, half sob, half laugh. His hands came up to cover his face. "Oliver." His voice was muffled. "His name is Oliver." "We know." Dorothy was crying now. "We've always known." Thomas dropped his hands. His eyes were red wet, broken open. "He's inside," he said. "He's watching cartoons. His voice broke. "He asks about you. Both of you. I show him pictures sometimes. He calls you Grandma and Grandpa, even though… He couldn't finish. Dorothy opened her arms, and Thomas fell into them. 75-year-old woman barely able to stand, holding her 45-year-old son as he sobbed like a child. 7 years of silence dissolving in seconds. "I'm sorry, Mom." Thomas's voice was broken. "I'm so sorry I shut you out." "Shh." Dorothy stroked his hair. "It's over. It's all over now." Walter wrapped his arms around both of them, and the three of them stood there holding each other, healing wounds that had festered for too long. The bikers watched in silence. Monk wiped his eyes and pretended it was the wind. Diesel didn't even try to hide his tears. Razor stared at the ground, his jaw working. Grizzly stood apart, watching. He thought about his mother, about the hug he'd never gotten to give her, about all the things he'd never said. This, he thought. This is why we came. Then a small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, who are all those people?" A little boy stood in the doorway. 4 years old. Dark hair like his father. His grandmother's eyes. Oliver. Dorothy pulled back from Thomas and looked at her grandson for the first time. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, he's beautiful." Oliver stared at her, then at Walter, then at the crying adults on his porch. "Daddy, why is everyone sad?" Thomas laughed through his tears. "They're not sad, buddy. They're happy. But they're crying. Sometimes people cry when they're happy too." Oliver considered this with the gravity only a 4-year-old can muster. Then he looked at Dorothy. "Are you my grandma? From the pictures?" Dorothy knelt down, ignoring the pain that shot through her entire body. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm your grandma." Oliver smiled. "I've been waiting to meet you." And he walked straight into her arms. Dorothy held him. This child she'd never touched. This miracle she'd crossed mountains to find. She held him, and she cried, and she thanked God for every second of every day that had led to this moment. Walter knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around his wife and grandson. Thomas stood over them, tears still falling, watching his family become whole again. The bikers stayed where they were. This moment didn't belong to them, but they'd helped create it, and that was enough. Grizzly finally spoke. "We should go. Give you all some privacy." Thomas looked up. Wait." He walked to Grizzly, extending his hand. "Thank you for bringing them home." Grizzly took his hand. "It was our honor." "Please," Thomas looked at the other bikers. "All of you, stay for dinner. It's the least I can do." Monk shook his head. "We don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding." Thomas's voice was firm. "You saved my mother's life. You brought my family back together. You're not strangers anymore." He looked at Grizzly. "I don't know what people say about your kind, but I know what you did, and I'll never forget it." The wind picked up. Snow was falling harder now. The storm was almost upon them. Grizzly looked at his brothers, at Dorothy still holding her grandson, at Walter, tears streaming down his weathered face. "All right," he said. "We'll stay." The storm hit Silver Falls like a fist. Within 2 hours, the roads were impassable. Snow piled 3 feet deep. Power lines swayed dangerously. The entire town went dark at 8:30 that evening. Thomas lit candles while the bikers gathered in his living room. 15 men in leather jackets sitting on the floor on chairs wherever they could find space. Oliver moved among them like he'd known them his whole life. "You have a skull on your jacket," he said to Razor. "That's so cool." Razor looked down at the patch, then at the kid. "You think so?" "Yeah, my friend Marcus has a skeleton shirt, but yours is way better." Razor smiled. It was the first real smile anyone had seen on his face in months. "Thanks, kid." Dorothy sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Walter hadn't left her side since they'd arrived. Thomas kept bringing her tea soup, anything he could think of. 7 years of distance collapsing into desperate care. "You should rest, Mom." Thomas knelt beside her. "You've been through so much." "I've rested enough." Dorothy touched his face. "I want to be awake. I want to see everything. This house, your life, my grandson. You'll have time, Thomas." Her voice was gentle, but firm. "We both know I might not." Thomas's jaw tightened. He looked away, blinking rapidly. Grizzly watched from across the room. He'd been quiet since they'd arrived, letting the family have their moments. But something was weighing on him, something he needed to say. "Mr. Callahan." He approached Thomas. "Can we talk outside?" Thomas looked at Dorothy, who nodded. "Go. I'm not going anywhere." The two men stepped onto the front porch. The snow was still falling, but lighter now. The world was wrapped in white silence. "What's on your mind?" Thomas asked. Grizzly pulled out a cigarette, then put it back, not in front of the kid's house. "Your mother's heart stopped on the road today." Thomas went still. "What? About 5 miles from here. She flatlined. I had to do CPR for almost 2 minutes before she came back." Thomas grabbed the porch railing. His knuckles went white. "She didn't tell me. She didn't want you to worry. Didn't want me to..." Thomas laughed bitterly. "She's dying. She crossed 90 miles of mountain in winter. She nearly died on the road. And she doesn't want me to worry. She wanted to see your son more than she wanted to live." Grizzly's voice was quiet. "That's the truth." Thomas was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was broken. "I wasted 7 years. 7 years because I was too proud to pick up the phone. Too hurt to read their letters. You were hurt. That's human. I was stupid." Thomas wiped his eyes. "My mother is dying, and I almost didn't get to say goodbye. Because of pride. Because of a fight that doesn't even matter anymore." Grizzly didn't respond. He knew there was nothing to say that would help. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas turned to face him. "Anything. Why did you really do this? You don't know us. You had nothing to gain. You could have called them an ambulance and gone back to your lives." Grizzly looked out at the falling snow. "My mother died while I was overseas. We'd had a fight before I left. She didn't approve of the club. Thought I was throwing my life away." He paused. "Last words I ever said to her were in anger. She had a stroke 8 months later. I didn't even know until 3 days after she was gone." Thomas was quiet. "I couldn't save my mother," Grizzly continued. "Couldn't make peace with her. Couldn't tell her I loved her one last time, but when I saw your parents on my doorstep, I thought maybe I can give someone else the chance I never got." "You did." Thomas's voice cracked. "You gave us that chance." "Then it was worth it." Grizzly met his eyes. "Every mile, every bloody hand, every minute." Thomas extended his hand. "Thank you, Jake, for everything." Grizzly took it. "Take care of them. Whatever time you have left, don't waste a second." "I won't." They went back inside. The storm kept everyone trapped for 3 days. 3 days of unexpected grace. The bikers became part of the household in ways nobody could have predicted. Diesel taught Oliver how to play poker, using candy as chips. Wrench fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen that Thomas had been ignoring for months. Monk cooked breakfast every morning, eggs, bacon, pancakes, enough to feed an army. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" Thomas asked, watching him flip pancakes with military precision. "Prison." Monk didn't look up. Kitchen duty for 2 years. You learn quick or you don't eat. Thomas wasn't sure how to respond to that. Relax, Monk said with a faint smile. That was 20 years ago. I'm reformed now. Reformed into the best cook I've ever met. Don't tell my ex-wife. She still thinks I can't boil water. Razor spent most of his time with Dorothy. He'd sit beside her on the couch, listening to her stories about Thomas as a baby, about Walter's military service, about the life they'd built together. You love him, Dorothy said on the second day. Razor blinked. Who? Jake. You give him a hard time, but you love him like a brother. Razor looked at his bandaged hands. He saved my life once. Found me in a ditch outside Reno, half dead from a beating. Didn't know me. Had no reason to help. But he loaded me into his truck and drove 3 hours to the nearest hospital. He swallowed. I gave him a hard time about helping you because I was afraid. Afraid of getting attached. Afraid of caring about someone again. And now... Razor looked at Oliver, who was showing Diesel his collection of toy cars. Now I'm glad he didn't listen to me. Dorothy reached out and took his hand. You're a good man, Razor. Whatever you've done, whatever you think you are, you're good. Razor's eyes glistened. Nobody's ever said that to me before. Then everyone you've known has been blind. On the third night, Dorothy asked to speak with everyone. She was weaker now. The trip had taken more from her than she'd let on. But her eyes were bright, clear, determined. The bikers gathered in the living room. Thomas and Walter sat on either side of her. Oliver was on her lap, playing with a toy motorcycle Diesel had carved from wood. I want to thank you, Dorothy began. All of you, for what you've done. Ma'am, Grizzly started. Let me finish. Her voice was gentle but firm. When Walter and I knocked on your door, we were ready to die. We'd given up. The cold had taken everything out of us, and we thought this is it. This is where our story ends. She looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. But you opened that door. You let us in. And you did more than save our lives, you restored our faith. In people. In goodness. In the possibility that kindness still exists in this world. Oliver held up the wooden motorcycle. Grandma, look. It has real wheels. Dorothy smiled, kissing the top of his head. It's beautiful, sweetheart. She looked back at the bikers. I know what people say about you. I know the stories, the rumors, the fear. She shook her head. But I've seen who you really are, and I want you to know whatever comes next, I'm grateful. More grateful than words can say. Grizzly's jaw tightened. He nodded once, but couldn't speak. There's something else. Dorothy reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wooden cross on a leather cord. This was my father's. He carried it through World War II. It's the only thing I have left of him. She held it out to Grizzly. Ma'am, I can't take that. You can. And you will. Dorothy's voice was steady. Because you're part of my family now. All of you. And family looks out for each other. Grizzly stared at the cross, then at Dorothy, then at his brothers who were watching in silence. Slowly he reached out and took it. I'll carry it with me, he said. Every mile. Dorothy smiled. I know you will. The storm broke on the fourth morning. The roads were being cleared. The power had come back. The world was returning to normal. Grizzly gathered his men outside Thomas's house. The bikes were warming up engines rumbling in the cold morning air. Thomas stood on the porch with his parents and Oliver. The little boy looked confused. Are they leaving? Yes, buddy. They have to go home. But why I like them? Diesel crouched down to Oliver's level. We like you too, kid. But we've got things to do. People to help. Like you helped Grandma. Exactly like that. Oliver thought about this. Then he threw his arms around Diesel's neck. "Thank you for the motorcycle." Diesel hugged him back, his tough exterior cracking completely. "You're welcome, little man. Take care of your grandparents, okay?" "I will." One by one, the bikers said their goodbyes. Hugs from Dorothy, handshakes from Walter and Thomas, high fives from Oliver. Finally, only Grizzly remained. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at the family he'd helped reunite. The wooden cross hung around his neck, resting against his chest. "I don't know how to thank you," Thomas said. "You don't have to." "Will we see you again?" Grizzly smiled. "Maybe. The road has a way of bringing people back together." He turned to Dorothy, who had Walter's arm around her shoulders. "Mrs. Callahan." "Dorothy." She smiled. "After everything we've been through, I think you can call me Dorothy." "Dorothy." He nodded. "Take care of yourself." "I'll try." Her eyes sparkled with tears. "But Jake, promise me something." "Anything. Promise me you'll find peace, with your mother, with yourself." She touched the cross at his neck. "She's not as far away as you think." Grizzly's throat tightened. "I'll try. That's all any of us can do." He mounted his bike. The engine roared to life. His brothers fell into formation behind him. Oliver waved frantically from the porch. "Bye-bye, come back soon." The convoy pulled away slowly, respectfully. No roaring engines, no showing off. Just 15 men leaving the family they'd helped save. As they turned the corner onto Main Street, Grizzly looked back one last time. Dorothy was still waving. He raised his hand in return. Then the road stretched out ahead, and they were gone. 2 weeks later, the phone rang at the Wolf's Den. Wrench picked up. "Iron Haven. Is this the Hells Angels clubhouse in Pine Creek?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Thomas Callahan. I'm looking for Jake Morrison." Wrench covered the receiver. "Jake phoned for you." Grizzly walked over, frowning. He rarely got calls. "Yeah, Jake, it's Thomas." Grizzly's chest tightened. "Is she?" "She's still here." Thomas's voice was thick. "But the doctors say it won't be long. A few days, maybe less." Grizzly closed his eyes. "She's asking for you." Thomas's voice cracked. "She wants to see you, before she goes." "I'll be there." "You don't have to." "I said I'll be there." Grizzly looked at his brothers, who had stopped what they were doing. "Tell her to hold on, I'm coming." He hung up. "What's happening?" Monk asked. "Dorothy's dying." Grizzly grabbed his jacket. "She wants to see us." No one asked questions. No one hesitated. Within 10 minutes, 15 motorcycles were rolling out of Pine Creek, heading toward Silver Falls one more time. They rode through the night. Dorothy was waiting for them. She'd insisted on being moved to the living room, to the same couch where she'd first held her grandson. She was so thin now, so fragile that it hurt to look at her. But her eyes were still bright. "You came," she whispered when Grizzly walked in. "Of course I came." He knelt beside her, taking her hand. It was cold, weightless, barely there. "I wanted to tell you something," she said. "Before I go." "What is it?" "I spoke to your mother." Grizzly went still. "What?" "In my dreams, these last few nights." Dorothy smiled weakly. "She visits me sometimes. She's waiting for me on the other side." "Dorothy, she told me to tell you something." Dorothy's grip tightened on his hand with surprising strength. "She said she forgives you. She said she was never angry. She said she's proud of the man you've become." Grizzly's vision blurred. He couldn't speak. She loves you, Jake. She always has. She wants you to stop carrying the guilt. It's too heavy, and you've carried it long enough." A sound escaped Grizzly's throat. Half sob, half laugh. He pressed Dorothy's hand to his forehead. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Dorothy touched his face. "Thank her, when you see her someday." She looked past him at the bikers gathered in the doorway, at Thomas and Walter and Oliver, who was curled up beside her on the couch. "I'm ready now," she said softly. "I've seen my grandson. I've made peace with my son. I've given you what you needed." She closed her eyes. "I can go." "Grandma," Oliver's voice was small, frightened. "Are you sleeping?" Dorothy opened her eyes one last time. She looked at the little boy she'd crossed mountains to meet. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to sleep for a while. Will you wake up?" She pulled him close, kissing his forehead. "Not this time, my love. But I'll see you again someday. I promise." Oliver didn't understand. He was too young, but he hugged her tight anyway. Dorothy looked at Walter. 52 years of marriage. 52 years of love. "I'll see you soon," she whispered. Walter couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thomas took her hand. "Mom." "I know." She smiled at him. "I know, sweetheart. I love you too." Her eyes fluttered closed. The room went silent. And Dorothy Callahan, surrounded by the family she'd fought so hard to reach, finally let go. The funeral was held on a Saturday. The church in Silver Falls was small, meant for maybe 100 people. But 300 showed up. They spilled out the doors, stood in the parking lot, lined the street. And at the front of that crowd, 15 Hell's Angels stood in formation. They'd cleaned their leathers, polished their boots, braided their beards. They looked like soldiers at attention honoring a fallen commander. The pastor had never seen anything like it. "We're here to celebrate the life of Dorothy Mae Callahan." He began, his voice wavering slightly as he looked at the bikers. "A woman who taught us that love knows no boundaries." Thomas stood at the podium, Oliver's hand in his. Walter sat in the front pew, staring at the casket like he couldn't quite believe his wife was inside. "My mother was stubborn," Thomas said, his voice cracking. "She was proud. She held grudges. She made mistakes." He paused. "But she also crossed 90 miles of frozen mountain to tell me she was sorry. She nearly died 3 times on that road. And she never stopped. Not once." He looked at the bikers. "These men, the world calls them outlaws, criminals, dangerous." Thomas shook his head. "But I call them heroes. Because when my mother was dying in the snow, they opened their door. When she needed to get home, they drove her. When her heart stopped on a frozen road, they brought her back." His voice broke completely. "My mother made it home because of them. She held her grandson because of them. I got to say goodbye because of them." Tears streamed down his face. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift." Grizzly stared at the floor. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched. Razor stood beside him, eyes wet. "She changed us," Razor whispered. "I didn't think anyone could anymore." "She did more than change us." Grizzly's voice was rough. "She reminded us who we could be." After the service, the procession moved to the cemetery. 15 motorcycles led the way, engines purring low, respectful. Behind them, 100 cars followed. The whole town had stopped to watch. People who had once crossed the street to avoid men like these now stood in silence, hats removed, hands over hearts. At the graveside, Walter finally spoke. 52 years. His voice was barely audible. 52 years, and I never told her enough. Never said the words enough. I always thought there'd be more time. Thomas put his arm around his father. But these last few weeks, Walter's voice cracked. These last few weeks were worth everything. Because of what those boys did. Because they gave us time we didn't deserve. He looked at Grizzly. My wife is gone. But she went happy. She went whole. And that's because of you. Grizzly nodded. He couldn't trust himself to speak. The casket was lowered. Prayers were said. Flowers were thrown. And then Oliver tugged on Grizzly's leather jacket. Mr. Jake. Grizzly crouched down. Yeah, buddy. Is Grandma really gone? Her body is. But her spirit. Grizzly touched his chest where the wooden cross hung. Her spirit stays with the people who love her. Like you. Grizzly's throat tightened. Yeah, kid. Like me. Oliver threw his arms around Grizzly's neck. Thank you for helping her. She told me you were her angel. Grizzly held the boy this small piece of Dorothy's legacy. She was ours too. Tantupuank. The wake was held at Thomas's house. Neighbors brought food. Friends brought flowers. The bikers brought whiskey and stories. To Dorothy. Diesel raised his glass. The bravest woman I ever met. To Dorothy. The room echoed. Monk had cooked again enough food to feed the entire town. He moved through the kitchen like he owned it, directing traffic, making sure everyone had plates. You should open a restaurant, Thomas said, watching him work. I've thought about it. Monk handed him a plate piled high. Maybe someday, when I'm done riding. Will you ever be done? Monk smiled. Probably not. But it's nice to dream. Razor sat in the corner with Walter, listening to the old man's stories about Korea, about his early days with Dorothy, about the life they'd built together. She was the strong one, Walter said. Always. I just followed where she led. That's not weakness, Razor said. That's love. Walter looked at him with new eyes. You understand that at your age, I'm learning. Razor looked at his bandaged hands. She taught me things in 3 days that nobody taught me in 30 years. Like what? That helping someone doesn't make you weak. That opening your heart doesn't mean it'll get broken. Razor swallowed hard. That family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Walter patted his arm. You're a good man, son. Don't let anyone tell you different. Grizzly found Thomas on the back porch, staring at the night sky. Mind if I join you? Thomas shook his head. Please. They stood in silence for a while, breath misting in the cold air. She told me about your mother, Thomas said finally. About what you carry. Grizzly tensed. She talked a lot. She cared a lot. Thomas turned to face him. That message she gave you from your mom, did it help? Grizzly's hand went to the cross at his chest. I don't know if I believe it was real. Does it matter? What do you mean? My mother spent her last weeks believing she was talking to the dead in her dreams. Maybe she was. Maybe it was the medication. Maybe it was just her mind finding peace. Thomas shrugged. But the message she gave you, forgiveness, pride, love, those are things you needed to hear. Does it matter who they came from? Grizzly was quiet for a long moment. I've carried this guilt for 15 years, he said finally. It's been like a stone on my chest. Every morning I wake up and it's there. Every night I go to sleep and it follows me. And now, Grizzly touched the cross again. It's lighter, not gone, but lighter. That's a start. Yeah. Grizzly looked at the stars. That's a start. The next morning, the bikers prepared to leave. Thomas had offered them rooms for as long as they needed, but Grizzly knew it was time. They'd done what they came to do. Dorothy was at rest. The family was together. "You'll come back?" Oliver asked, hugging Diesel's leg. "Try to keep us away." Diesel ruffled his hair. "Besides, who else is going to teach you poker?" "I'm going to practice every day." "That's my man." Walter stood on the porch, looking older than he had a week ago. Grief had settled into his bones, weighing him down. But there was something else there, too. Peace, maybe. Acceptance. "Where will you go now?" he asked Grizzly. "Home, for a while." Then, Grizzly shrugged. "The road. That's where we belong. You're always welcome here. All of you. We know. And we appreciate it." Walter extended his hand. Grizzly took it. "My wife believed in angels," Walter said. "Real ones. The kind that watch over people. I never did. Thought it was foolish." He squeezed Grizzly's hand. "I don't think that anymore. We're not angels, Mr. Callahan." "Maybe not the kind with wings." Walter smiled through his tears. "But you're the kind that matters." Thomas came out with a box under his arm. "Before you go, I have something." He opened the box and pulled out 15 leather cords each with a small wooden cross attached. They were rough handmade, carved from the same wood as Dorothy's cross. "I made these last night," Thomas said. "One for each of you. My mother would have wanted you to have them." The bikers looked at each other. Then one by one they stepped forward. Diesel, Wrench, Spider, Monk, Razor, all of them. Thomas placed a cross around each man's neck. When he finished, he stepped back. "You're part of our family now," he said. "That doesn't end because the road calls you home." Grizzly looked at his brothers. 15 men in leather and denim wooden crosses hanging against their chests. They looked different somehow, not softer, but fuller. Like something that had been missing had finally been found. "Let's ride," he said. The engines roared to life. Oliver waved frantically. "Bye-bye, I love you," Diesel's voice cracked as he waved back. "Love you too, little man." The convoy pulled away from the blue house on Maple Street. But this time they didn't just leave. They carried something with them. Something that couldn't be seen, but could be felt. Dorothy's gift. Her faith. Her love. Her belief that even the roughest edges could be smoothed by kindness. The story spread. First through Silver Falls, then Pine Creek, then beyond. A local reporter had attended the funeral. He'd watched the Hells Angels stand honor guard for an elderly woman they'd barely known. He'd listened to Thomas's eulogy. He'd seen the wooden crosses placed around their necks. His article went viral. Hells Angels or Heaven's Helpers, biker gang escorts dying woman. 90 miles to see grandson. Within a week, it had been shared 1 million times. News crews showed up at the Wolf's Den. Interview requests poured in. Grizzly turned them all down. "We didn't do it for attention," he told Monk. "We did it because it was right. People want to know the story. Dorothy's family can tell the story. We don't need the spotlight." But the spotlight found them anyway. Letters started arriving. Dozens, then hundreds, from people all over the country. A woman in Texas whose husband was dying, asking if they could help him see his brother one last time. A man in Ohio, whose mother had been stranded on the highway, thanking them for reminding him that strangers could still be kind. A teenager in California who'd been afraid of bikers his whole life, writing to say he'd changed his mind. Grizzly read every letter. Every single one. "What do we do with these?" Diesel asked one night, looking at the pile. "We answer them." Grizzly picked up a letter from a woman in Montana. "And when we can help, we help." "That's a lot of rides, boss." "Then we better get started." 6 months later, Grizzly rode to a cemetery in Nevada. He went alone. No convoy, no brothers. Just him and his Harley and a cross hanging against his heart. His mother's grave was simple. A small headstone with her name, her dates, and the words, "Beloved Mother," carved into the stone. Grizzly stood there for a long time. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I let pride keep me away. I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye." The wind rustled through the grass. "But I want you to know I'm trying. I'm trying to be better, to do better." He touched the cross at his chest. "A woman named Dorothy helped me see that. She told me you'd forgiven me. I don't know if that's true, but I want to believe it." He knelt down, pressing his hand against the cold stone. "I love you, Mom. I always did. Even when I couldn't show it. Even when I was too stubborn to say it." His voice cracked. "And if you're watching, if you're out there somewhere, I hope you're proud of the man I'm becoming." He stayed there until the sun began to set. Then he stood mounted his bike and rode toward the horizon. 1 year later, the wolf's den looked different. The neon sign still flickered. The bikes still lined the parking lot. The sound of laughter and rock music still spilled into the night. But there was something new on the wall. A plaque. Wooden. Hand-carved. It read, "In memory of Dorothy May Callahan. She asked for shelter. She gave us purpose." Beneath it hung the original cross she'd given Grizzly. He'd placed it there the day after her funeral. A reminder to everyone who walked through those doors. The club had changed too. They still rode, still wore their patches, still lived by their code. But they'd added something to that code. Something Dorothy had taught them. Once a month, they took a ride. Not for themselves, for someone else. A veteran who needed transport to a VA hospital. An elderly person who needed help getting to a family reunion. A child who wanted to meet their hero. They called it the Dorothy Ride. Thomas brought Oliver to Pine Creek every summer now. The boy had grown tall, strong, curious. He followed the bikers around like a puppy asking questions, learning to work on engines, dreaming of the day he'd be old enough to ride himself. "You think Grandma would be proud?" Oliver asked Grizzly one afternoon. Grizzly looked at the boy. Dorothy's eyes, Thomas's stubborn jaw. "I think she's the proudest angel in heaven." Oliver grinned. "I'm going to be just like you when I grow up." "No." Grizzly put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're going to be better. Track." Walter passed away 2 years after Dorothy. He went quietly in his sleep, in the same bed they'd shared for 50 years. Thomas found him with a smile on his face, and Dorothy's photograph clutched to his chest. The funeral was smaller this time. But the bikers came, all 15 of them. They stood at attention as the casket was lowered. They watched as Thomas placed a wooden cross on his father's grave next to his mother's. And when it was over, they rode. One last time. Through Silver Falls, past the blue house on Maple Street, up the mountain road where everything had changed. They stopped at the overlook where they'd first seen the town. Grizzly looked at his brothers, at the crosses around their necks, at the road stretching endlessly before them. "You know what Dorothy told me once?" he said. "She said angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have leather jackets and loud pipes." Monk smiled. "Sounds about right." She was wrong, though, and Grizzly looked at the sky. "She was the angel. We were just the ride." He kicked his engine to life. "Let's go home, brothers. There's people out there who need us." The convoy roared down the mountain, chrome gleaming engines thundering. 15 men who'd learned that the greatest strength isn't in muscle or firepower. It's in opening your door when someone knocks. It's in carrying someone when they can't walk. It's in riding 90 miles through frozen hell because a dying woman asked to hold her grandson one last time. The road stretched ahead endless and unknown, but they didn't ride alone anymore. Dorothy's spirit rode with them, in the crosses at their chests, in the kindness they carried, in the lives they touched along the way. And somewhere up above, an old woman with bright eyes and a stubborn heart watched them go. She smiled. Her angels were doing just fine, because sometimes the roughest hands carry the gentlest hearts. Sometimes the loudest engines sing the quietest prayers, and sometimes, just sometimes, the men the world fears most are the ones who love the hardest. This story started with a knock on a door. It ends with a truth that will echo forever. Angels don't fall from heaven. They ride in on 2 wheels. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. These stories only reach people because of you. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your doors unlocked. You never know when an angel might come knocking.